Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. It is Friday evening. Happy Friday. Hope you've had a pleasant week. It is time for another BS and a beer, and this one is going to be a little therapeutic to dull the pain of losing earlier to Julie and JD in the football battle. We are going to attempt this week. The Flute is back. A salute to our glorious leader, Jethro Tull. We are sliding in another attempt at the fruit beer, but this time I am a little more confident. For you see, this is from Founders Brewing Company up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, 2015 edition of Blushing Monk. And it's very old, and I don't even know if that's stuck on or torn off. But it's a Belgian-style ale fermented with fresh raspberries. Here's the kicker why I think it could work. 9.2%. The first one we tried was, I think, basically half of that and did not hold up. So, fingers crossed we can actually have a fruit beer and talk about that a second. Okay. Well, thus far so good. We heard carbonation. Hold on. All right, fingers crossed. Okay. I think we might actually be good. So let's give it a pour and see. There's that lovely physics sound. All right. So there we have it. A little coppery in color. Unlike some raspberry beers that I've seen, they're not jet pink, but this is good. Still have carbonation, so all right, fingers crossed. Let's go flip this around and see how this one held up. And we're back. Now, here's why I think we might be in good stead. The first one, when you have a beer that may be intentionally supposed to be sour. Let's lower this a little bit. There we go. It will actually have that like sour. Sorry, I'm keeping an eye on the football game, and Green Bay just scored a touchdown. Shout out to sports card ripping teacher. They'll have that like tart vinegar smell, but the last time with the New Zealand beer actually had like a rotting vegetal smell, and that's not what you want. This, on the other hand, does not have that. This has you still smell a good amount of raspberries, and from what I read of the bump from when they brew it, I think they said quote unquote ridiculous amount. Lord knows how much that is. They probably said it, but more than likely it's a lot. So let's see how we do it. Ooh, interesting. I know they still make this beer. This isn't something in their retired series. So I'd be curious to actually try it fresh, but you get the raspberry. Yeah. You get a little bit of the raspberry. It's kind of not like the candy sweet raspberry, but more the tart dry, the actual fruit of it. It's really, really good. I think it held up pretty well, honestly. Okay. And then I was thinking, like, I saw a comment from an earlier one, and then it got me thinking again. You know, the old, because everybody talks about the wine and food pairings, but, you can do it with beer, too. So I was thinking, let's dust off the old beer knowledge, beer muscle encyclopedia that used to live up here. See if I can remember. Honestly, you have to think about it common sense wise. It's more what flavors go together than what don't go together. So something like raspberry, that's going to tend to be a little more sweet and a little more fruity. Definitely, I would say use it as a dessert beer. Something chocolatey, something fruity. But if you're going to go it with like an actual meal, you don't want it to overpower something, and at the same time, you don't want it itself to be overpowered. So probably would be best to go probably something along the lines of something light, lighter meats, lighter salads, things like that. Anything with like, a raspberry vinaigrette would be pretty good. So I figure, yeah, there you go. That'll be Zach's, we'll call that, we'll call it the food and beer pairing corner. And you know what? I'll probably change that tomorrow when I promptly forget whatever I just called that. So either way, I think it would be something good. And it's nice to actually be able to use the flute. I was all pumped to use it last time and it didn't come through, but it came through this time, so victory. We're going to take a little little sip of this, and then we're going to get into the subject matter at hand, because, you know, it's one of those things. Zach got bored, and look what he went on the internet, and look what he found. So cheers once more. And you know the crazy thing? You still have that little alcohol burn. It's not too bad. It's actually pretty good. Yeah, I don't know if I would try it past 10 years. I think 10 years is probably the maximum of what it's going to be. I think at this point it has hit the point of diminishing return. But that's why I'm glad I tried it now. So that's definitely a good one. So what I alluded to last time was board games. Things that we used to do, but we don't do often anymore, and we really should. And then, did you ever wonder, like, a little bit of the history behind them? So I dug, and some of them are actually, like, really dark. Like the history of the game of life. Yeah, no, I'll let somebody else cover that on YouTube if you get what I'm saying. But we will turn our attention to one. It's a classic, and pictures and whatnot are going to be popping up there. We have Clue, or Cluedo in Europe, Clue here in America. And for anybody wondering, I did wonder why they called it Cluedo originally, because basically it is a mashup of the English word clue, you know, and ludo, which is Latin for I play. So that's where Cluedo came from. But then in America, we just called it Clue. By the way, great movie. There it is. Great movie. The one with Tim Curry as the butler. Fantastic movie. Watch it. You'll love it. But Clue actually came about as a result of the Germans' bombing of England in World War II. Devised in 1943. So let's sit back. I've got some notes. Devised in 1943 by British wartime fire warden Anthony E. Pratt. He came up with the idea for the game while, quote unquote, walking his beat in between the Nazi fire bombings during World War II. We got Waddington Games. This is the company he pitched it to. Had to hold off on production for a while because of the amount of pieces, and since it was in a war, a lot of things were rationed, so you couldn't really use a lot of these materials on frivolous things like game pieces. And interestingly, so, you know, the original ones, it had the gun, the rope, the knife. However, there were other 3 makeshift ones. It says 3 makeshift debrainers. Don't know what that is, but it sounds cool. But also an axe, a syringe, poison, a bomb, and a shillelagh. Yeah. Cluedo was a little bit rough back in the origins, and that's what I'm talking about. And it's also interesting to see just how they came up with. You know, here you go. Boom. Monopoly. The game that I defy you to say anybody has ever actually finished playing a game of Monopoly. I don't think anybody has. There's still games that started in the 40s that are still going on. Now, according to Mr. Monopoly, that name alone should tell you everything. During the height of the Great Depression, an unemployed salesman named Charles Darrow proposed Monopoly to Parker Brothers in the year 1934. It was first rejected, but eventually he closed the deal. Completely wrong. No, actually, that's a complete lie. That's what they told you on the box. The game actually was pretty much stolen, as it was, from a game called The Landlord's Game, patented in 1904 by a Quaker woman named Elizabeth Maggie, M-A-G-I-E. I'm not sure if it would be Maggie or Maggie or whatever. Essentially, it was Monopoly as we know it today. However, there was a second round where the game taught you just how unfair and how one-sided and evil monopolies can be. Basically, Hasbro or Parker Brothers or whomever it was bought out her patent for $500, and Monopoly was born. If that isn't one of the definitions of irony, I'd be hard pressed to actually think of a better one. Well, we'll finish off the first one. Yeah, okay, if you hold it up, there's actually a little bit of a ruby color. It looked more darker copper because it's very hazy. Again, unfiltered, the yeast remains. That's a good thing because the yeast is flavor. There we go. One flute finished. Another flute shall be poured. and then we will continue on with our ramblings. And again, now the crazy thing is, pretty much up to this point, and I do have to admit this, pretty much up to this point, everything I've talked about, I have talked about or will talk about, because there's stuff coming up that 100% is also, this also applies to it. These are actual conversations I've had with people in bars. So that'll give you a good idea of basically what it's like to spend time with me. Now, we move on. We go down to Trivial Pursuit. Speaking of bars and pubs, I mean, what goes more hand in hand with a pub than trivia, other than darts? I'm not a very good darts player. I can play, but I'm not very good at it. Trivial Pursuit came around actually a lot more recent than I thought. Invented in the year 1981. Now, here's where it gets weird. I know, as if things with me and the camera aren't weird enough. The majority of the questions back in the day was stolen, but taken directly, word for word, from a book called Super Trivia by a guy named Fred L. Worth. It was published in 1974. Interestingly, the author, Fred Worth, intentionally would put a mistake in the questions in order to catch people who were plagiarizing his work, as he said. And actually, it was Trivial Pursuit that busted it open, because it was the infamous, what is Detective Columbo's first name? And it was the incorrect answer. It said Philip, but his name was Frank. So eventually, Fred Worth, sees that Trivial Pursuit has stolen stuff from his book, files a $300 million lawsuit against them. Here's the problem, and why it was pretty much promptly dismissed. You cannot copyright trivia, and you cannot copyright facts. Here you go. That's a fact that cannot be copywritten. You simply can't do it. Now, to get even more strange. I don't know, I think everybody's familiar with it. Put it up there, Zach. Thank you. Chinese checkers. I think we're all familiar with it. I don't know how many people have actually played it, and probably even fewer people know where it came from. Want to know the crazy thing? Chinese checkers, it's not Chinese. It's not even Asian. Chinese checkers was invented in 1892 in Germany. It was invented under the name Sternhalma. And basically, it made its way around in that name, eventually made its way to the United States under the name, what was it, Zach? Sternhalma. However, a manufacturer or a company in 1928 in the United States decided to change the name, much like a long time ago when I talked about people changing names of things to improve sales, like the raspberry oranges for the blood oranges. They decided to change the name from Sternhalma to Chinese checkers, essentially to take advantage of people's sense of wonder, and the mysterious aura of what at the time they would call the Far East. Complete marketing decision, but you know what? Brilliant marketing decision. There's no doubt about it. A little pause for the cause, and we've got one more good one, and this one is just a matter of, I don't know, maybe blind luck, but we'll see in a moment. As it warms, weirdly, the raspberries are starting to become more pronounced, which isn't a shock. As liquids warm up, the flavors will open up more because it's not muted. But interestingly, you're actually, good thing is you really should hold these things by the stem. Regulates the temperature. But it's really coming out now. A little tiny bitterness is coming up at the end, which I think you can attribute to a combination of the age, the malts, and the nature of raspberries themselves. They tend to run a little tart, and then it's going to leave that kind of dry, whatever that is, whatever that flavor is, that noise. So now we return to the games, and we talk about Twister. Get your minds out of the gutter. There you are. Your mind's out of the gutter. We're going to keep it clean, up until the end at least. So, the year is 1965. A guy named Ren Geyer. I've actually seen a lot of stuff on him. This is interesting. He was hired to sell some back-to-school shoes, and because of his quest, or his task, he created that polka dot mat. So, let's see. Here, I'm going to actually get it right, because I wrote it down. I'm a researchman. Created the polka dot mat to highlight the children's footwear. So again, a marketing decision. How better to garner somebody's attention than to take a shoe, put it on a snow white canvas on a very brightly colored polka dot. I mean, it writes itself. Then he realized, because of the material he made it from, kids could actually step on it. And then, and now this is a product of the times also. The original name he gave the game was, hold on. If you're having one, don't have one as I say the following statement. The original name that he pitched the game to was called King's Footsie. Don't think about that one too long. Just please. And he pitched it to game makers. Shockingly, I can't imagine why all of the game makers turned down a game called King's Footsie. Couldn't figure it out. He then hired game designers who rebranded the game to Pretzel, makes a little more sense, and ultimately Twister. However, it was still kind of on the verge. Couldn't really get a foothold, no pun intended. However, Milton Bradley eventually picked it up under the name of Twister. Initially, flopped. Complete failure, complete and utter failure. However, oh wait, and here's the best part. The reason it flopped was because parents didn't want to buy it for the kids because they viewed it as too sexual. You know, with the contorting and the joining of bodies and whatnot. And again, we're talking the year 1966. However, speaking of 1966, let's move ahead a little bit. Let's move ahead to May the 3rd, 1966. And on that day, on air, on the Johnny Carson Show, Johnny Carson played a game of Twister with Ava Gabor. Shockingly enough, sales went through the roof. Cannot figure out why. The most popular television show host of the time, and arguably one of the greatest sex symbols of the time as well, playing Twister. Who would have thought it? Bonus fun fact, speaking of games and inventions. Boom, that thing there. Remember that? The Nerf football? Yeah, everybody loves the Nerf football. You know who invented the Nerf football? That guy. Former NFL kicker Fred Cox played his entire career with the Minnesota Vikings, and one of Pittsburgh's favorite sons passed away a few years ago. But that man right there, was the inventor of the Nerf football back in 1972. Think about that. The Nerf football was born in 1972. Nerf football is old. And amazing. I think that picture that I showed earlier is an actual original one, still in its original wrapper. I couldn't even fathom that. This is the way that all the conversation should end. Just a contented sigh and a drink. Because we've had some good times. Shared some knowledge. Drank part of a beer. I'll finish the rest later because it's Aloha Friday. Don't forget, go over and see Aaron, sports cards and things. And we got to talk about fun stuff. So, I'm going to wrap this up and then I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to give you, I guess, God, I can't even think of a title for it, but you know what? I'm going to finish it off with the tease for tomorrow, which is, in the realm of court cases, we talked about the quote, rather frivolous lawsuit that Fred Worth filed on the Trivial Pursuit behalf. You know, the court case we're going to talk about tomorrow, that one is going to be a doozy. But you're going to have to stay tuned for that. We will see you tomorrow at this time, and then we will talk about that. And I would like to send off a cheers and leave you with a parting thought. So one more time, cheers if you're having one along with me. And then I will leave you with this parting thought. If you think about it, technically, your first birthday is actually your second birthday. Have a good night, everybody.